We're awaiting the start of business on the floor of the House. And as we count down to a vote on the debt deal, you'll remember that last week, as Republicans were drumming up support for their plan, Texas Republican Louie Gohmert said he was, quote, bloody and beaten, but he was still going to be a no vote for that original Boehner plan. Is that still the case today? Texas Republican Louie Gohmert is a member of the Constitutional Conservative Caucus, and he joins me now. Congressman, how are you going to vote on this new deal?
Well, I pulled it off the internet this morning around 2:15 a.m. and then spent a few hours going through it. We hear one thing in summary, but when you're told that when we're told that there's going to be cuts beginning in 2013 and they'll go over through for 10 years, we know that in out years, anything beyond 1 or 2 years from where we are right now is not likely to happen. And then when you pull the bill and you actually see that for 2013, you've got $546 billion for security category and $501 billion non-security, and 10 years later, those have been increased $200 billion. It's hard for me to see how that's a cut, especially when you know that, for one thing, apparently the baseline numbers are considering that the Bush tax cuts expire in January 2013. I mean, we could fight, but this presumes that they go out of existence. And then also you've got, I mean, there are things like the trigger mechanism in this.
Yeah, but before you get into the trigger mechanism, I just want to stop you because the details that you're giving us are pretty interesting, because we had heard that the $1 trillion in cuts start immediately. You're saying that that's different from what you're reading?
No, it's different from what I'm reading in the bill itself. Those $1 trillion, yeah, they're agreed to now, but they will be over a 10-year period and apparently not start until 2013. And the federal budget automatically goes up every year. It's the dirty little secret of Washington. And one of the things that the Speaker and Paul Ryan promised on Friday is we're going to get a vote in the House to go to a zero baseline budget instead of the automatic increases. But then to
but you're not seeing that.
The dramatic cuts to defense at a time like this, it's not a good idea.
So it sounds like you are a no vote.
I'm looking for a reason to be a yes. I haven't found it. This is too serious. And, you know, we promised that if we were in the majority, we would give 3 days before we crammed anything through. And since we didn't have it, I was up all night going through this thing. And I'm just telling you, I find one concern after another in this.
How long is it? How many pages?
It's only 74, but one of the problems with going through legislation like this, you have to not only read the legislation, you have to see what sections are referenced, because that's a common tactic. Make it where you can't find it just reading this. You have to see how it affects the reference legislation in the bill. So, but for example, there's no enforcement unless the OMB director files a sequestration report. Now, call me cynical, but suppose the OMB director is a very good friend of the president, and the president just says, don't issue a report. There's no enforcement mechanism beginning.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting to hear you speak as though you're cramming for the exam and that you've been up since 2 a.m., you know, pouring through these details and reading it. Do you think that
this is more important than any exam I ever took?
It sure is. I mean, do you think that your fellow Republicans in the House will vote for it? And do you think they'll have had a chance to read it by the time they're asked to vote for it?
Well, we've got a conference at 12:30. We just got notice just shortly ago. And I hope that we can educate people and have some questions answered, because this doesn't look good. It really doesn't look good. There's a lot of problems in here. And another thing that I find, if you want to get around all the cuts, then you just call it emergency legislation. Now, I'm not sure. Somebody said we declared the census money as emergency legislation, even though we've known it was coming for 200 years.
Wow.
So it's not that hard to declare something emergency so you can get around caps.
Right.
That's why we needed a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, so these games can't be played
like that's this. What you obviously wanted to vote yes on, were prepared to last week. All right, well, Congressman Louie Gohmert, thanks so much for pouring through all the details and sharing it with us. This is pretty interesting stuff, and we'll see what happens after your conference at 12:30. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And there's a lot more to report on, too, as we will throughout the morning into the afternoon. John Scott's picking up things.